Well, worship was really good this morning. I don't know about for you guys, but I was like super encouraged. I want to invite up our reading for this morning. We're jumping right into it. Hope you guys are ready. Turn to somebody and say, hey, are you ready for this? Boom, 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 boom.
Okay, we're going to read from Matthew 16, 13 to 20. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you that we get to be here together and worship you, Lord Jesus. I just pray as we read this word, that your word that is alive and active and powerful would just like come to our hearts and, convict us to be more like Jesus. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah.
Cool. It's a good one. My name is Frank. Welcome. Glad you're here this morning. Welcome to everybody watching online as well. You picked a good day to tune in as we continue to better understand what living out a kingdom adventure with our lives looks like and means. Jody and I went down to Sandpoint for a day. It was lovely. The GPS failed us moving around, getting to a bookstore that we were looking for. At one point, it asked me to turn around, but it turned out that walking backwards didn't get you any closer to it either, and so that was really weird. Then I hit a lamppost. Fortunately, I only sustained light injuries. One of the reasons that I married Jody was for her looks, but it's not her looks when I'm telling these jokes. I tell you that much. She just, I better get to it here this morning. In today's story that we are looking at here, Jesus has taken his disciples into a remote area that they hadn't been to before, to pause from this adventure that they had been on together, and to chart the course moving forward, to tell them what it is that kingdom adventurers do. They are, they are about to embark on a final push together. And so Jesus stops for a little while to pause and reflect and take account of where it is that they are and move them into what it is that they need to do. They've been together now for 2.5 years, and they've heard his teachings. They have seen him work. They've seen him do hundreds and hundreds of miracles. And now, alone with them, he asks them this question: who do people say the Son of Man is? It's another term that Jesus used for himself. And they replied, "Some say you're John the Baptist. Others say Elijah. Still others, Jeremiah or one of the prophets." It's interesting that Jesus was compared to these three men. Many people believe that Jesus was one of these men reincarnated or come back to life. That he was preaching similar to these kind of prophets and doing miracles the way that these prophets would do miracles. And some people, as they looked at Jesus, they saw the character of John the Baptist. They saw his heart and his desire to see the kingdom of God come to fruition. Some saw in him the fire and the intensity and the authority that Elijah had. And still others saw in him a lament, a grief that Jeremiah had, who saw how the children of God treated one another so poorly and how it is that they treated the world so poorly. People believed that Jesus might be one of these prophets. So his disciples here are paying him compliments, right? They're kind of like patting him on the back, putting him in a high place. It just wasn't quite high enough. He was more than a prophet. So Jesus asked his disciples this pressing question. But what about you? Who do you say I am? This is the ultimate question that every single person must answer. Who is Jesus to you? Who do you say that he is? A good teacher, a good role model? Was he an influential religious leader from the past? Was he a con artist, a misguided fool? Who do you believe that Jesus Christ really is? When Jesus asked his disciples, who do you say I am? It was Simon who spoke up first. He said, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. The Messiah, other translations say, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. That just means a title that is given to somebody who is going to be the king over all of the other kings, the leader to lead all of the leaders now and all of the leaders into the future. And God's Son. Then Jesus basically says, bingo, that's exactly right, Peter, that's who I am. And this is the question that Jesus would ask each and every one of us. Who do you say I am? It's a question we all have to answer because it determines our destiny, not just here and now in this life, but in the eternity to come. The Christian life begins with this confession. Jesus is Lord. In the book of Romans, Paul said, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it's with your mouth that you confess and are saved. Today I want to issue an invitation to everybody here. Maybe some of you are in here and you've never made this declaration of faith in Jesus Christ. And maybe today is your day to make it. And if you have made this declaration of Jesus being Christ in the past, then maybe you need to renew it today. Affirm in your heart once again that Jesus is the leader over you. He is Lord. He is the Messiah. He is the Son of the living God. And when Peter made this affirmation, listen to what Jesus said to him. It's so cool. Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah. For this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter. He changes his name here. You are Peter. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I'm going to give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Peter's declaration of faith reveals three things to us here, the same three things that are actually given to every believer who claims Jesus Christ as Lord. And before we look at them, I want you to take one more look at verse 17 again with me. This was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. A proper understanding, a real understanding, a true understanding of Jesus Christ is not something we can attain through our own efforts, our own cerebral pursuits. It's something that is actually revealed to us from the Father as we seek out the one true God. God revealed to Simon Peter, now Peter, the truth about the nature of Jesus, because Peter's heart and his mind were actually open to hear the truth. He was listening for God. listening that God might speak to him. See, you cannot approach the examination of the claims of Jesus with a closed mind, or you'll never understand who it is that Jesus fully is, because God is a polite God and he only goes where he's invited. In other series in this message, in these long chew into Matthew that we've been doing over the last year and a half together, we've talked about multiple times that at its core, if you want to understand this book, you have to dig into it and ask for God to reveal truth to you inside of it. You have to. We've talked about the biblical historical evidence, and we've talked about the underlying motive. But truly, if you want this thing to come alive, you have to say, God, reveal this truth to me. You have to be on an adventure, on a quest for truth. Your heart and mind actually have to be open to the revelation of God. That's because faith is not something that we can manufacture intellectually. It's a gift from God that we must be open to receive. Paul said, for it is by grace that you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God. You can only receive this gift if you're actually open to receiving it. God can reveal something to you only if you're willing to listen. Peter listened and God gave him a revelation of faith. And if you're listening, then he will reveal himself to you as well. In fact, maybe I just want to pause right here and right now. Father, I ask that even right now, in this stillness, that for those people who are asking right now, you would reveal yourself to them. Holy Spirit, speak. And for those of you who are beginning to get a revelation, or for those of you who have received a revelation in the past, will you just confess with your mouth, with everybody here, speak it out loud, that Jesus is Lord? We'll do it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Father God, I pray that even right now, that you would just come into the hearts of those people who are saying that. Begin your saving work. Begin your restorative work. Begin your redeeming work. Where Jesus is Lord, there is no room for anything else. There is no room for any other influences. There's no room for my pride. We just fill people up right now with you, completely and totally with you. Jesus, be Lord of their life. In the original language, Yeshua HaMashiach. Fill them. Reveal yourself to them. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, Peter's declaration, it resulted in 3 things that are available to every single believer. Let's take a look at them this morning. When you claim that Jesus Christ is Lord, truly and fully with all of your heart, you get invited into a kingdom adventure of purpose. A purpose where you get to work and be a part of something so much greater than yourself. Verse 18 tells us that kingdom adventurers get to work on building his church. That's the first one. And I tell you, I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. This is the first time that the word church is actually mentioned in the Bible. The very first time that this word church comes into existence is here. The ecclesia, the gathering of believers. Jesus gave birth to it, and the amazing thing is that he gave birth to the church here at Caesarea Philippi, of all places, which is crazy. A place that most people called the gates of hell. Why? Because there were thousands upon thousands of people who had been sacrificed in a cave inside this wall of rock at Caesarea Philippi, where they would take human sacrifices and they would drop people down into this chasm of despair, they called it. And at the bottom of the chasm, inside of this notch inside of the rock that is still there to this day, was a spring of water down underneath. And they just kill people there all the time in order to appease the god Pan. So much so that they began to call that area the gates of hell. It was horrific, a horrific place. And the cool thing is, Jesus is doing this really cool thing where there are multiple different play on words here that are happening. He gives Peter this word, this name called the rock, Petros, the male version of the word Petra, which means the rock. In this place where there's this giant rock of death and despair and darkness. But instead, he says, you're going to be a rock, and I will build my church on you, the believers of the true faith of life. Not death like this place. Now, the Catholics interpret this statement to mean that Peter was the first pope. In response, many times Protestants still try to interpret this verse in any way possible in order to discredit the idea that Jesus was ordaining Peter as pope. They say that the rock that Jesus referred to here was actually himself, or they'll say that the rock that Jesus referred to here was actually the rock of confessing your faith of Jesus as Lord. They say that the rock referred to here was actually a rock of faith. But the text is absolutely clear. Jesus is saying, plain and simple, you are a rock, Peter, and on this rock I will build my gathering of believers who will bring the kingdom of Jesus into existence. Now, does this mean that Peter was the first pope here? Well, it actually means that he was the first Christian here, as the first to confess that Jesus is Lord. Jesus builds his church on people. We are building blocks that he uses for something greater than ourselves. He used Peter to build his church, and he used the apostles to build his church, and today he uses us. In Ephesians 2, verse 20, it says, you are members of God's household, built on the foundations of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the chief cornerstone. Or 1 Peter, later on, Peter is talking about this. He says, as you come to him, Jesus, the living stone, rejected by men, but chosen by God and precious to him, as you come to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house, a holy priesthood. Jesus is not saying that Peter is the foundation of the church. He's just the first rock that got attached to it. We are the stones that make up the building of the church. You are one of the living stones. He wants to use you to construct the church. Also, he's going to use you, if you're willing, to break down barriers. Verse 17, on this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not overcome it. Other translations are the gates of Hades. Other translations say the gates of hell, but generally it's talking about death, the gates of death. The picture here is of a fortified city protected by huge gates. Now, in this analogy that Jesus is talking about here, who is on the offense and who is on the defense? Who's on the offense? I'm asking. Somebody tell me. Who's on the offense? If you are taking it to the gates, who is on the offense? We are. So many of us hear this and we think, oh yeah, the gates won't overcome us. No, you go to the gates. We are on the offensive. We are called to go, to open up those gates. An army doesn't bring its gates with it when it attacks an enemy. Jesus is saying the church needs to be on the offensive. Attack hell to bring people out of it. Because these gates are actually more like a jail cell holding other people in the pit of despair. We need to help open the gates, break down the gates, and bring them out of the abyss that they've thrown themselves into, and into the mercy of a relationship with the living God. See, there is a spiritual battle at play against good and evil. It's taking place in our world right now, and God's will is that the church should not shy away from that battle, but meet the challenge head on. We are not on the defensive, we are on the offensive. In a practical sense, what does this mean? It means that as a living stone, as each of us who would profess Jesus as Lord is a living stone upon which the church is built, your job is to seek out opportunities to break down the walls that others have put up. Every time you share the love of God with someone who doesn't know him, you attack the gates of hell. Every time you reach out to somebody in need and you meet that need, you love them where it is that they're at, you are attacking the gates of hell. Throughout history, there have been some who have described the church as kind of like, that backward little out-of-date remnant trying to hold on desperately, always on the defensive until finally Jesus will come back and they'll be saved. No! We're kicking ass and taking names. Taking names away from Satan. Come on, you guys. It's time for us to shake off this, oh me, oh I'm persecuted, oh it's awful, No! We take it to them. Jesus painted a very different picture of the church. We are a proactive force, breaking down walls as a force for good. Then he'll use you, if you're willing, to actually open doors. I'll give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. The keys to the kingdom. Jesus is telling Peter and all believers that we have been made stewards of God. We're his wardens. We have been given the keys to the kingdom in order to open a door that was previously locked, to unlock it so that others may come out from death and into life. See how this played out in Peter's life after the death and resurrection of Jesus on the day of Pentecost? Peter preached a very simple sermon to the people in Jerusalem and unlocked the doors for 3,000 people on that day to be saved. In Acts 10, he unlocked doors. In Acts 15, he unlocked doors to the non-Jewish believers of the time so that they could come and join the ecclesia, the church. Today, the church's job is the same. We're to be opening the doors to God's kingdom so that all who want to know Jesus may come in. And every time you have coffee with someone who's a non-believer, you're willing to open a door. And every time you show up at group ready to encourage others, you're opening doors. And every time you serve here on a Sunday morning or serve somewhere else midweek, you are opening the doors so that you might be able to share the good news with somebody else. So that you are able to open the doors that people have locked themselves behind, the gates of hell. You open those up and you pull them out of the pit. All condensed down Kingdom adventures basically mean that we love the hell out of people. In regards to binding and loosing, which is a gloriously huge topic that I'm going to have to come back to on another day, I'm just going to leave you with this. God has delegated his authority to the church, to us. He invites us to partner with him, to act out his will on his authority, but on our own initiative, to bring people out of slavery, slaves to death, slaves to sin, slaves to addiction, slaves to insecurity, slaves to depression, slaves to anxiety. We open the doors for them, and we invite them out of that life. We loose them into the kingdom. But man, we church, we got to put the onus back on us again to pray. We have to be a people who pray. Gosh, some of you need to be a people who pray. To seek out, to go into the dark spaces, the dark places that nobody else is willing to go. We have to help people feel love before they can accept love. Why? Not to earn our way into heaven. We don't do good deeds. We don't love others in order to earn our way into heaven. Confessing Jesus as Lord is what gets us into heaven. Loving others, doing good works, is our way of thanking God for what it is that he's already done, and our way of helping others experience what it is that we've experienced. To help them get on their adventure that God has for them as well. An adventure into the kingdom of heaven. Man, you guys, God wants to partner with you. The God of the universe wants to partner with you to build his church, to change the world by breaking down barriers and to open up doors for people who have been so locked behind them for years that the hope is just, they can't even begin to hope anymore. But the responsibility and the authority of taking his message to this lost and dying world is on you and on us. Our orders are not to retreat. Our orders are to charge forward, to bring the battle to the gates of hell. But some of you, you're just so trying to survive because you're fighting in your own strength and you're not putting on God's armor, that you're basically ineffective in the kingdom right now. It's time to stir up the gifts of the Holy Spirit again. Some of you need to stir up your gift again. Some of you, you need to just believe again, have faith again, act again, do it again, move again, step forward again in faith, not on your power, but on God's power. Take it to the gates of hell. We're not to be inactive, we're called to be proactive. As members of God's church, our job is to seek opportunities to open up doors to the kingdom so that others may come in and find life. Let's pray.